Right now, we're going to jump into something a little bit different to wrap up the show. We always have people mail us in over at our website, which is whatsonsports.com, and they send us in questions, and we try to answer them to the best of our ability. Now, today we have 3 questions. I have not read the questions. Lance has read the questions. He'll read the questions to me. I'll respond with my first reaction, and then Lance will probably have some interesting statistics that he'll use to back that up a little bit later on. Here comes our first question. Lance, it's on you.
Okay, so first question is from Logan from Chesapeake. So, do you see Washington trading up to draft a quarterback?
Well, like most things, if the price is right. So if the opportunity is there and the price is right, Washington could move up. I also think that Washington could sit right where they're at. They could sit right where they're at, and I think they draft the 11th or 12th. I got to check now. Could you check that for me while I'm rambling here? I think that Washington can stay right where they're at, and I believe in some of the mock drafts I've seen, Mac Jones falls to them. They may want to take a flyer on somebody in the second round and kind of piece together something like that. Look, I think Washington is built from the back up. Washington's got a good offensive line. They can run the ball. They can actually play defense. They can rush the passer. They're just a quarterback away from being somebody who's a little more relevant. And but I don't think it's worth selling the future in order to get that quarterback. Washington as an organization has made that mistake. And they paid for it dearly by going up to get RG3 and giving like a ridiculous amount of first-round picks. I believe they gave 3 first-round picks and maybe a second-round pick. I can't remember what that deal was, but it was just like, wow, I can't believe you gave all this up to get RG3. And RG3 was good for a year or two, and then he wasn't any good anymore. So I think they know that, and I think there's a possibility that they may not actually. Okay, I just looked it up. Washington picks 19th. So I think staying where they're at is really the opportunity for them right now, Lance. If you're talking about a trade up, maybe 4 or 5 spots, maybe. But I don't see them trading up to the point where they get into the top of the draft to actually go for a quarterback. What do you think?
Actually, they're in a good position in a lot of aspects. So I really believe that they will give Taylor Heineke a shot at the start of the season and to see Kyle Allen backing him up. So those are their 2 top quarterbacks. So they would like to extract more of Taylor Heineke's magic from that wild card game to see if he really lives up to the hype for an entire season. And if he does so, that's a masterful sign up for the Washington football team, getting a talented quarterback at that price. Yeah. So another thing that another good thing that is happening for them is that they have $38 million in cap space. So that's pretty substantial for a team that needs a lot of players in several positions. So they can fill the roster through free agency with players that can immediately compete with the team. Because like we always mention, we never know what we get from the draft. So even if you trade up, it's still an enigma on who you get. So he could be talented and all in college, but his game might not translate in the NFL.
Yeah, very possible. Very possible. You just never know. All of these guys, and any of them. I mean, you look at all these guys that have been drafted over the last 4 or 5 years. Are any of them true superstars? You know, you look at Deshaun Watson, you look at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, obviously those guys are cream of the crop. But who else has been drafted that's been that guy? I mean, who is it? I mean, you can't say it's the kid in Arizona. You can't say Cleveland's got the guy. You can't say really anybody who's really going to be that next ascending player. You thought Carson Wentz was going to be the next ascending guy, and look what happened there. So I just don't. To me, any franchise that spends that amount of money on an unproven commodity, anybody, and I'm talking about even Trevor Lawrence, is an unproven commodity. Anybody who spends that kind of draft capital on an unproven commodity is just chasing rainbows, and it's not going to work out. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, so next question comes from Steven from Alabama. So he would like to ask, when do you see Bill Belichick retire from coaching?
I think the answer would be never. I think that eventually they're gonna put robotic parts in Belichick, and they're gonna wheel him around like Darth Vader, and he's still gonna be out there coaching, going, play defense. That's what I think is going to happen. I think Bill Belichick absolutely positively has lived football his entire life. And like a lot of people we know who work the same job or do the same thing for 30, 40, even 50 years, especially from an older generation who didn't have job mobility as much as younger people do now. I think people, when they retire, start to find that there's there's something missing in their lives. I have friends of mine that were police officers for 25 years. They finally retire, and they just go through the worst depression because their life was a police officer. All their friends were cops. Their work was cops. They worked out in the cop gym. They did cop functions. They went out to cop parties. Like, there was all these things that were involved in being a police officer that weren't just work. It was also part of their social life. So for somebody like Belichick and even some of these players to a certain degree, the hardest part for them is to separate themselves from the locker room. The hardest part for them is to separate themselves from the camaraderie that they build up with the people that they work with. And you could say that and joke around like I did and say Bill Belichick is Darth Vader or he's a robot. But I think that Bill Belichick's social life and his personal life are intertwined with being a football head coach. And I would find it be very hard to find it very hard to believe. Sorry. I would find it very hard to believe that he'll walk away from this job anytime soon. He'll probably have to be pushed out eventually. If you want an actual number from me, I'd say 5 more years. I think Belichick's 69 or 70 now. I think he'll coach till he's 75 years old, if they let him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see the possibility of him being in cryostasis mode and coaching beyond his years. But kidding aside, Bill Belichick has earned his right to actually say when he leaves the game because he has been an accomplished coach, a 6-time Super Bowl winner, football lifer, just like you mentioned. I mean, he has been in football ever since the 1970s with the Baltimore Colts as one of the assistants of Ted Marchibroda. So he's been in the game for 5 decades. So it will be hard. It will be hard for him to kick it out of his system. I mean, he even exercises in the morning, reviewing football plays while he is at the treadmill. So football is really embedded into who he is and into his character, into his life. So granted that he already is a legendary status, I believe that he has earned his right to call quits whenever he wants to. And when will that happen? Actually, it might be far-fetched, but I see him breaking Tom Landry's record in Dallas. So he is already at the 21st season, and he's still as sharp as hell when it comes to coaching. I mean, he still led the Patriots to 7 wins last season, despite that kind of a roster and a lot of opt-outs. So with a better roster, even on defense, he could go 8-8 or 9-7. So that's a 2-win swing. So relatively, he still has a fresh football mind. He still has what it takes to really lead an organization. He's not yet slipping up there, so he still keeps his mind sharp, and he's just 8-9 seasons away from Tom Landry, and I see that happening.
Yeah, I think it's for all of us at some point. If you do a job long enough, it's no longer what you do; it's who you are. And Bill Belichick is a football coach. Let's go to our last question, coming from the What's on Sports question poll.
Okay, so this is from Anita from Philadelphia, and I can see the reaction from John because it's about his team. So, who will be the Steelers' priority signing from all of their free agents?
Look, who should be their priority signings or who will be their priority signings? I don't think the Steelers have any money. I think that's really going to be the biggest problem right now. The Steelers are dead up against the cap. They're still over the cap. They're trying to restructure Ben Roethlisberger. They've got to restructure a few other guys to try to get under the cap. And even if they do, they're probably not going to have a lot of money left over. So who should be their priorities to re-sign? A guy no one's heard of. His name is Zach Banner. He could probably play tackle. He actually tore his ACL in the first game last year. Was scheduled to start as the starting right tackle, but got hurt, so they had to use his backup to play. Whose name I can't say. We just call him Ola because it's such a long name. They can move him to left tackle. I don't know. It's a mess. That team's an absolute mess right now. They've got half their team is a free agent, and they don't have any money. Now, who should they resign? In my opinion, I think they have to resign Bud Dupree, and I think they have to resign Mike Hilton. Bud Dupree is obviously an edge rusher, one of the premier edge players in the NFL. Dupree may come back for a 1-year deal at a discount rate because he tore his ACL, I think, in week 13 or 14. So I think that puts him in a position where most teams know he won't be able to play most of the year. So his first year may not be a great contract. Bud may say, listen, I live in Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. Let me play here one more year. Give me $5-6 million to stay. And you'll only have me for half a season. I'll come out. I'll show everybody I can still play. It'll be a year that brings me a bridge year that brings me to a big contract. Maybe here, maybe somewhere else. The other ones, like I said, is Mike Hilton. Again, a name a lot of people don't know, but Mike Hilton really made that defense go. Played slot corner for Pittsburgh. Sometimes dropped deep into play safety. Really improved his coverage this year. His coverage was great. But one of the things that Mike Hilton does that not a lot of cornerbacks do in the NFL is Mike Hilton is one of the best blitzers in football, not just as a cornerback, but just one of the best blitzers in football. Takes a beeline to the quarterback like a rocket ship. You never know he's coming, but when he comes, he hits so quick. And the other thing is, for being probably the smallest defender on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, Mike Hilton is probably their best tackler. So he's great in the run game, especially on the edge, which is so important when you play Lamar Jackson twice a year. So those are the two guys I think they should sign. Who will they sign? I don't even know. Honestly, I'd have to really go through and figure out what the hell they're going to do in the next 2 weeks to fix their own cap problems. And I think part of it is going to be a Ben Roethlisberger solution where Ben takes that contract and divides it into 2 years. And other than that, I really don't know what they're going to do. They're probably going to cut some guys that they shouldn't have to cut, but they're just in a bad position right now, Lance. It's really, really bad as far as the Steelers go. How about you? You got any opinions? Have you worked on this one at all?
Yeah, cutting Roethlisberger's contract in half would be a huge cap relief for the Steelers. So I believe all of their movement will stem from that fact if they can have some wiggle room from his contract. And if there's anything that last season has proven is that if you have above average defense, you can compete in the NFL. So I'm talking about Washington, who had an above average defense,
Sure.
Miami, who had an above average defense. So that granted, if Pittsburgh can keep their defense above average, then they do have a striking chance of going back to the playoffs. So along that line, I believe that Mike Hilton should be their priority for the Pittsburgh Steelers because he was just go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Continue about Mike Hilton.
So Mike Hilton, he just covered a lot of space. I mean, it's like there are two Mike Hiltons on the field last season. So he could cover wide receivers. He could cover an empty field on zones. And like you mentioned, he can also blitz the quarterback. He knows the cadence of the snap, and he just goes on the fly. So he's that versatile weapon that you have that even though you miss some spots on the other portions of the field, at least you have a Mike Hilton who can cover a lot of ground. So I believe that he would be the priority for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming into this offseason.
Yeah, look, if you look at their cap situation right now, they're $11.7 million over the cap as of right now today. They've got a ton of free agents that they have not signed, so they've got a huge problem that they've got to fix. Ben Roethlisberger's cap number is $41 million. $22.25 million of that money is from past contracts that are owed to him. So that's from restructuring and saying, listen, we're going to move that debt forward. And he's already been paid that money. Now, people don't understand a lot of times when they move the debt forward, they still pay the money now. So Ben's already been paid that money. So he's only due future money. So let's just say the 22.25 has to stay. Let's say that Ben Roethlisberger agrees to play for the league minimum over the next 2 years, which for somebody of his tenure, I think it'd be like $1.4 million. Let's just say it's $2 million. Let's say we're paying him more. We're going to pay him $2 million a year for the next 2 years. Take $21 million, divide it in half. You got $11 million. You add $2 million onto each side. It's $13 million for the next 2 years, and you sign them for 2 years. $13 million saves almost $30 million this year. That gives Pittsburgh $20 million in cap space to sign their rookies and to go into free agency and to fix some of these holes they have. That's not counting cutting a guy named Eric Ebron, who's our tight end who had led the league in drops for tight ends, and maybe cutting Joe Hayden. There's a lot of space that Pittsburgh can do things in to try to create some space. I don't know that they're going to be able to do a lot of it without actually killing themselves. They have $9 million in dead cap money this year too. So Pittsburgh's in kind of a strange space. I really wish somebody wouldn't have asked me that question because now I'm getting anxiety over it. But that's not a great way to end the show, Lance, but that's exactly how we're going to end it. My name is John Tedora. I'm the sports trader. That was Lance Fernandez over there. Oh, wait, he's over there. Sorry. That's where he is. He's the sports nerd. You can go read all Lance's sports stuff over at whatsonsports.com. While you're over there, guys, you got to join the $2 Sports Club. The link is in the bottom of the description.